1934, the year of public enemies, the Dust Bowl, and the Grumpy Duck. Welcome to 1934. If 1933 was about the desperate hope of the New Deal, 1934 is the year the American government decided to stop playing nice and start cleaning house. This is the year the FBI turned into a real-life action movie. The year the heart of the country literally blew away in the wind. And the year we met a duck with a sailor suit and a serious attitude problem. Stick around, because 1934 is the year America proved that the law was finally back in charge, and Public Enemy #1 was a title that only led to a dead end. The year began with a massive effort to bring order to the chaos that had defined the early years of the Depression. In early 1934, the government realized that if the economy was ever going to recover, people needed to trust the system again. This led to the creation of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in June. Its job was simple but revolutionary: to police Wall Street and make sure the wild speculation that caused the '29 crash would never happen again. 1934 was the year the Wild West of finance finally got a sheriff, laying the foundation for the modern American stock market. But Wall Street wasn't the only thing getting a new set of rules. In June 1934, the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, was established to oversee the rapidly growing worlds of radio and wire communication. Before this, the airwaves were a messy frontier of overlapping signals and unregulated content. 1934 was the year Uncle Sam stepped in to organize the way America talked to itself, ensuring that the radio, the most powerful tool of the era, would be used for the public good and under federal oversight. While the bureaucrats were writing rules in Washington, the real headlines were being written in blood on the dusty backroads of the South and Midwest. This was the year of the Great Manhunt. In May 1934, the law finally caught up with the legendary outlaws Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. After a 2-year crime spree that captivated and terrified the nation, they were ambushed by lawmen on a lonely road in Louisiana. 1934 was the year of the death car, a moment that turned two violent criminals into tragic folk legends and proved that the era of the romanticized outlaw was coming to a violent end. But Bonnie and Clyde were just the beginning. The FBI, led by a young and ambitious J. Edgar Hoover, was determined to prove its worth. In July 1934, they tracked down the man they called Public Enemy #1, John Dillinger. He was the most famous bank robber in history, a man who had escaped from jail with a wooden pistol and eluded the law for months. But his luck ran out outside the Biograph Theater in Chicago. 1934 was the year of the Lady in Red, and the night to G-Men proved that no criminal, no matter how clever, was beyond the reach of federal justice. To make sure that the criminals who did survive would never see the light of day again, the government opened the doors to its most terrifying project yet. In August 1934, the first federal prisoners arrived at Alcatraz Island in San Francisco Bay. Known as The Rock, it was designed to be the ultimate inescapable prison for the worst of the worst. 1934 was the year Al Capone was transferred to a cell on a cold, fog-shrouded island, signaling to every mobster and bank robber in the country that the party was officially over. While the feds were fighting human enemies, nature was unleashing an enemy that no gun could stop. In May 1934, a massive dust storm, one of the worst in history, swept across the Great Plains. It didn't just stay in the Midwest. It carried 350 million tons of topsoil all the way to the East Coast, darkening the skies over New York City and Washington, D.C. 1934 was the year the Dust Bowl became a national catastrophe, forcing millions of Okies to abandon their dead farms and head west toward California in a desperate search for survival. In the world of culture, Americans were looking for any reason to smile, and they found it in a very grumpy package. In June 1934, Donald Duck made his official debut in the Disney cartoon The Wise Little Hen. With his unintelligible voice and his explosive temper, he was the perfect reflection of a frustrated, struggling nation.
I swear,
1934 was the year the Disney universe expanded, giving us a hero who didn't always have a happy attitude, proving that sometimes the only thing you can do when the world is against you is to let out a loud, frustrated squawk. But if you couldn't find happiness in a cartoon, you could at least pretend to be a millionaire at home. This was the year a man named Charles Darrow started selling a board game called Monopoly. In a country where almost no one had any real money, people became obsessed with buying property and building hotels on boardwalk. 1934 was the year we turned the Great Depression into a tabletop sport, proving that even when we were broke, the American dream of getting rich quick was still our favorite fantasy. In May 1934, the world was captivated by a biological miracle that felt like something out of a fairy tale. The Dion quintuplets were born in Ontario, Canada, the first quintuplets known to have survived infancy. They became an instant global sensation, with millions of people following every update on their health. 1934 was the year we became obsessed with these 5 little girls, who became symbols of hope and the miraculous power of life during a time when the world often felt cold and dead. Finally, in July 1934, the world of science lost one of its greatest pioneers. Marie Curie, the woman who discovered radium and won 2 Nobel Prizes, passed away. She was a giant of the laboratory who had literally given her life to her research, dying from the effects of the radiation she had studied for decades. 1934 was the year we said goodbye to a woman who proved that genius has no gender, leaving behind a legacy that was already beginning to change the way we understood the very building blocks of the universe. While the summer of 1934 was defined by the death of John Dillinger, the FBI's war on organized crime didn't end there. In October 1934, federal agents and local police cornered another legendary outlaw, Charles "Pretty Boy" Floyd, in an Ohio cornfield. Floyd was a hero to some in the rural Midwest because he allegedly destroyed mortgage papers during his bank robberies, but to the government, he was a dangerous killer. 1934 was the year the Robin Hood of the Cookson Hills was brought down in a hail of gunfire, proving that no amount of folk hero status could protect a man from the modern reach of J. Edgar Hoover's G-Men. The violence of the Public Enemy era reached its bloody peak just 1 month later in November 1934. In a fierce shootout known as the Battle of Barrington, federal agents engaged in a high-speed gunfight with Babyface Nelson, the most violent member of the old Dillinger gang. Nelson managed to kill 2 agents before succumbing to his own wounds. 1934 was the year the FBI lost some of its best men to stop the most vicious criminals of the decade. A brutal reminder that cleaning up the streets of America was a task that required a heavy price in blood and sacrifice. While the guns were firing in the Midwest, a cultural revolution was taking place on 125th Street in New York City. In January 1934, the Apollo Theater reopened its doors, but this time it was dedicated to Black performers and audiences. It quickly became the premier showcase for the greatest talents in jazz, blues, and swing. 1934 was the year Amateur Night at the Apollo was born, providing a stage for legends like Ella Fitzgerald to find their voice, and proving that even in a deeply segregated America, the soul and rhythm of Harlem would become the heartbeat of the nation's culture. In the world of cinema, 1934 gave us a movie that changed the way we looked at romance and comedy forever. Frank Capra's It Happened One Night was released, starring Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. It was the first film to sweep all 5 major Academy Awards, and it practically invented the screwball comedy genre. 1934 was the year we learned that a hitchhiking heiress and a cynical reporter could captivate a nation, giving a struggling audience a much-needed escape into a world of wit, charm, and the simple human connection that transcended social class. But the government wasn't just focused on entertainment. It was also trying to right the wrongs of the past. In June 1934, the Indian Reorganization Act, also known as the Wheeler-Howard Act, was signed into law. This was a radical shift in federal policy, ending the forced assimilation of Native American tribes and encouraging them to establish their own tribal governments and reclaim their communal lands. 1934 was the year of the Indian New Deal, a rare moment of justice that recognized the sovereignty of indigenous people and attempted to preserve the cultures that had been nearly destroyed by decades of government pressure. However, the struggle for a fair deal wasn't limited to the reservations. It was exploding in the American workplace. September 1934 saw the start of the Great Textile Strike, which involved over 400,000 workers from New England to the Deep South. It was the largest labor strike in American history up to that point. 1934 was the year the factory floor became a battleground, as workers fought for better wages and the right to unionize, facing off against National Guard troops and flying squadrons of strikers in a conflict that showed just how far the American worker was willing to go for a seat at the table. The labor unrest reached a fever pitch on the opposite side of the country during the West Coast waterfront strike. In July 1934, tensions in San Francisco boiled over into what became known as Bloody Thursday, when police clashed with striking longshoremen, leaving 2 dead and hundreds injured. This led to a 4-day general strike that paralyzed the entire city. 1934 was the year San Francisco stood still, proving that the labor movement had become a force that could shut down a major American port and forcing the federal government to step in and mediate the future of the American waterfront. To help the average family find some stability amidst this chaos, the New Deal launched one of its most enduring programs. In June 1934, the National Housing Act created the Federal Housing Administration, FHA. The goal was to make homeownership possible for the middle class by ensuring long-term mortgages and setting standards for construction. 1934 was the year the American dream of owning a home with a yard and a white picket fence became a government-backed reality, beginning a housing revolution that would eventually reshape the American landscape into the suburbs we know today. In the skies, the way we traveled was also being reshaped by a new generation of technology. In May 1934, TWA began the first regular transcontinental service using the Douglas DC-2. It was faster, quieter, and more comfortable than anything that had come before it, making the journey across the country a matter of hours instead of days. 1934 was the year commercial aviation grew up, turning the airplane from a dangerous novelty into a reliable industry that made the vastness of the American continent feel just a little bit smaller and more connected. Finally, Hollywood decided it was time to clean up its own act, or at least its image. In July 1934, the Production Code Administration, PCA, led by Joseph Breen, began strictly enforcing the Hays Code on all movies. This meant an end to the pre-code era of grit, violence, and suggestive themes. 1934 was the year the morality police took over the silver screen, ensuring that every movie ended with the bad guys in jail and the good guys in a virtuous light, a shift that would define the look and feel of American movies for the next 30 years.